So I'm Ross Frank. I'm from the Department of Ethnic Studies at University of California, San Diego. I'm one of the many people who have been working on the Critical Mission Studies project over the last 3 years. And most of you are the other people who have been working on the Critical Mission Studies project for the last 3 years. So I want to thank everyone who's presented today. First, I'd like to introduce a friend, an amazing person, Paul Harry Cuero, otherwise known as Junior. I've known Junior for a couple decades at least, and I first met him as a what I would describe as an organic intellectual, someone who has absorbed all sorts of things from early ethnographic accounts of this region, all sorts of formal texts that my students don't even know about, as well as an incredible amount of organic, grounded knowledge that comes from being in the community, being a leader, and being a leader in a number of different ways on different registers. I also remember Paul as performing with the San Diego Symphony in a symphony that was written in part, the whole section, for his singing, as well as conversations, both political and otherwise, over the course of years in thinking about the region, and also the development of indigenous sovereignty in many respects, often mixing cultural, spiritual, social, and then also concerns about how to renew the generations for a long, sustained way of living here. So I'd like to just ask everyone to give it up for Paul Cuero and welcome him and his birthday to the Critical Mission Studies Conference. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ross. I'd like to introduce my wife. This is Jodine Cuero, and she's going to help me today with the part of my presentation here on the what did you call it?
Oh, it's just looking at the psychological framework in terms of how the traditional knowledge, his traditional knowledge that he is passing down, and how he incorporates it as a coping mechanism that has been helpful in maintaining balance and wellness. So it's just coming from one of the theoretical cognitive behavioral perspectives. That's just one of, I would call it, an alternative idea in incorporating some sort of balance within this Western world that we live in.
So in saying that, you know, the part of my thing for the Critical Mission was to talk about our songs and talk about what the church had kept us from. Today we have one of our songs, we call it Takuk in our language, and most people know that as bird songs. And there's teachings in those songs and life and stuff like that. But we also had a lot of other songs that were sung as well that also had a lot of teachings in it. And a lot of those songs disappeared over time. And Bird was one of the songs that we were able to hold on to. For us, we say that the song comes from the very beginning of the Creator who gave it to us. And how what the church did to keep us from that knowledge, you know. So you know, I'm just old enough to see that when I was a young boy, at our funerals and things like that, we were singing church hymns. We weren't singing our own songs, and you know, we had prayer leaders that were trained by, you know, at them going to church, and And those are the ones that would come along and sing. And we would still do our wakes, and they would do the rosary, and then they would do these church songs or these hymns, and they were all in Spanish, which we didn't know what they were even saying. But they're very, very beautiful in the melodies. And I would sit there and listen to it, and there was an article that came out in 1985 by one of the leaders' wife. She would also go along with him and sing all different places. They were prayer leaders, and I remember seeing them as a boy, and I just remember hearing them singing. And she talked a lot in this article about her husband and what he was doing. He was the first one, he was trilingual. So he spoke Indian, he spoke Spanish, and he spoke English. And she told the story of how, he would go along and do these prayers and stuff. And a lot of the people didn't know what was going on because they didn't speak Spanish. They were all in Spanish. And so he started to explain a lot of it in Indian. And like I said, since Catholicism came here and took over, we were kind of following. They really kind of took charge of a lot of our things. And like I said, one of the big things was music. And like I said, I don't know the word, the songs, what they meant, but they had very beautiful melodies, and like I'll sing a couple of them for you. There was one that was like, Buenos dias, paloma blanca, voy sobre luz saluda. Saludame tu Sayen, the rain the cielos, yeah. So you hear that melody, it was sad, and people would cry. Another one would be, Adios, reina du cielo, Madre del Salvador. Adios, oh Madre mía. Adios, adios, adios. So you would hear these melodies all through the night, and then when we'd come to the end, and people, he'd said, they sang these songs to help people cry, to get it out. And because within our own music, we had that too, but it wasn't being sung no more. And the tribes in the desert were still doing it. And we would ask, every once in a while, we'd ask them to come up, and they would come and sing. And, some of the music that we have was shared among a lot of the desert tribes. And, like I said, we had a singer up here. His name was George Hyde at the time. There was others. But what had happened, during these times also, that, like I said, the church came in and they kept us from singing these songs. A lot of the old people knew them, but, they weren't doing it. And as a boy, like I said, I just started to see where our music started to come back. And I thought, like I said, I'd listen to these church hymns, and I was like, man, they're really pretty too. But I didn't know what they were singing about. But the melodies were really pretty. And when you don't know something, you can't really learn from it, right? You're just hearing the music, but you don't know what it's really saying or what it's about. And that's kind of like today, even with our bird songs. A lot of our young people don't know what they're about either. So so now we're kind of like transitioning with that as well, as trying to teach them to what the meaning is. And a lot of times what I tell them, like, when we start out, our songs are really slow, and it's talking about the sun going down, and they're real slow. And I always tell them it's like a train. You know, it's starting off, and also it's also meant for us to also be able to sing all night. So it starts out really slow and low, and as you start building and you start coming, like I say, I always tell them it's kind of like you're starting to go up the hill, and the songs are, you know, now are getting a little bit, you know, because, you know, when you go uphill, it takes more energy. So now you're putting more energy into it because you're going up that hill. And then you come up to midnight. Now you're at that plateau. And that's where, our song, at midnight there's certain songs that would need to be sung. But at the same time, because of the Catholicism, you know, like I said, we kind of emerged. Okay, you know, we got to take a break, let the prayer leaders come in and do their songs, and then we would start up again after them. And then when it came to midnight, there was kind of a little clash, because at midnight we had songs that needed to be sang, and they felt that they had to sing some songs. Because one of them's talking about Good Friday, and, you know, and it's talking about when Jesus has you know, he's dying. But also for us, when it comes to midnight, we're going to go around and we're saying we're protecting the spirit of that person. So there would be this little clash. Well, we got to sing our songs at midnight. We're like, well, we got to sing our songs at midnight too. And, you know, so, you know, they kind of would work it out. Okay, you know, well, you know, go ahead, you guys do it. Or no, you go ahead, you do it this time. And to now, where we don't have none of that. We're not having none of those church hymns because now, you know, people are believing differently, and so now we're just doing our own songs, but we're still having where the people are not understanding them, and not getting the full everything out of it, and you know, like even for myself, I didn't know how to explain it, and. I was talking, one day my little grandson came to me, he's 5 years old, and he asked me, Bubba's, that's what he calls me, do you know how to meditate? And I'm thinking, no. So he gets down on his, you know, he sits down and he puts his hands up like this and he's going, you know, I'm like, okay, I've seen that before, you know. And I was at the education center, and there was this a lady that was going to teach yoga. And I was asking her, and, you know, part of yoga, there's also meditation that goes along with it. So I was asking her, because I was saying, you know, my grandson's asking me, and I go, I don't know what that is. Can you explain it to me? And she sat down and she said, okay, let me ask you this. When you're singing, what are you thinking about? And I said, I'm just concentrating on that song that, you know, I have my eyes closed and I'm in that zone. She goes, you're meditating. And I said, wow, I never knew that. And I used to tell a lot of my singers, I said, you know, there's points where when I would sing, and I said everything would just slow down and be so clear that everything was just so clear to you. Well, that was meditating. So, you know, the church not only took away our songs, but they took a lot of other things that went along with it, that gave us these understandings that where I could be able to tell my singers, this is what I'm talking about. I only found this out, like I said, you know, maybe 8 months ago. Now I know where I can explain it a lot better. But you could see that knowledge that I'm missing because some things were taken away from us. And when you look at that whole part, when these things are being taken away from us, you know, like I said, you know, like our songs, you know, this song here, I'm going to sing it for you, and to me, it's a very important song because there's teachings in it. Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo, Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo, Ishakwala Chameo. Ishakwala Chameo, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo. Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo. Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo. Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo. Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo. Ishakwala Chameo, Ishakwala Chameo. Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayame, Yame, Wayameo. Ishakwala Chameo. Now, that song is talking about the morning is here. And a shakulau is a mockingbird. And the mockingbird is weeping, is what it's saying. And he's weeping because the day is gone. It's now gone. On the other hand, he's happy because a new day is starting. And so what they're telling us, that's what our tears are for, because that's what he's saying, that mockingbird's weeping. He's telling us, my tears are for when I'm happy and when I'm sad. That's why we have these tears. It's a way of releasing, not holding these things into, but letting it go. So you could imagine that here's one song that's just really teaching you how you need to let some of these things out, because if you don't, you're going to get sick. That's what the old people would tell you. You're going to get sick. So in that teaching, you're teaching the kids, this is why you do this. This is why this happens. You're letting and you're releasing these things. That's a teaching that, again, that's teaching you how to feel, how to let go of something, how to, why our tears come out. So you can imagine, like I said, we had all these different styles of songs and we were told we could not sing them. You need to sing these church songs. Yeah, but those church songs are just for this occasion. Somebody died. What about all the other songs that we sang that were not talking about that, but had these teachings in it to teach our people how to learn and how to deal with things? When you don't have those kind of things, what do most people resort back to? They resort to alcohol, drugs, something to numb it. Or now we're even told, be strong, be strong. And I always tell people, no, this is not the time to be strong. Let it out. It's okay. You don't have to be strong. This is where, again, as a people, we're here to do it for you. Go ahead, mourn. Do what you got to do. We'll make sure this gets done for you, for this person. Again, those teachings that were all along with our songs, that were teaching us how to do different things. Now, just taken away from now, we just have this one song that, again, that's pretty much intact. But it's been changed over time, too, because now we're using these songs for everything. Where before this song was sung for, gatherings and good times, but now we're using them for everything because it's the last one that we have left, and we can relate it. And like I said, so there's songs that we will change we'll say, this is what we're singing about now. This is what it means. So those songs being, in a sense, at the end when we're singing the last, get up, it says, get up. Get up. That's what. And a lot of times we're only singing these songs now from the beginning to the end is at our funerals. We're not doing it just for as we gather and we're singing, we're going to sing all night. Nobody wants to do that. It's only been sung now. It's only being sung at our funerals. And so, like I said, they've changed these songs in the order of some of it, because when you come to the end, they're telling them, get up, get up. And what they mean by that was that at one time, when we used to cremate, and that church came in and told us, we couldn't do that no more. You can't cremate because, that belief at that time, and that's what happens. Like, the church has changed its views on a lot of things over time, but we haven't, in the sense that, we're still using those beliefs. So, like I said, at one time the church believed that you couldn't cremate because when the time of resurrection, if there was no body, how could you be resurrected? So you guys can't cremate no more because there's going to be nobody to resurrect. So they stopped us from doing that. But there was a time before when, like I was telling you, that we did do that. And a lady, was an older woman, died. And they went there, get ready to cremate her. And as they were getting ready to start the fire, she sat up, scared the people. People got scared. And she said, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. They sent me back. It's not my time. And so the people were like, what are we going to do? So now, because of that happening, we sing these songs at the end. Wake up, get up. We're getting ready to bury you, or we're getting ready to get up, get up. That's what we're saying. We're giving them that last chance. Get up. So now you could see how those songs change now, because we're saying we've seen this what happened, and now we're giving them another opportunity to get up before we bury you or we cremate you. Those songs, like I said, so when you look at songs, it helps you to deal with some of these realities, how things happen, and how we have to change along with those changes. That's what songs gives us that availability to do. So just like, when there are songs that come towards the morning, and really it's talking about, like, it's always coldest before dawn. And they're saying, start the fire. Start the fire. And now they look there, when they sing that song, they're talking about, we're getting ready to start the pyro, getting ready to cremate, start the fire. But at one time it was talking about, hey, it's cold, start the fire, let's warm up. And the way those songs went, as they started the fire, it was heating the sky. And the heat was eating the stars, meaning that now that sun's coming too, and it's eating the stars, they're disappearing. And so that's how those songs used to be sung at one time. But now they're sung, we're getting ready to start the fire for this person, get ready to cremate. So you, again, like I said, you could see how we've taken some of our songs and we've changed them around to mean what we're doing here. Just like those boys when they sang this morning. For us, all of our songs talk about the sun going down. And it comes like that because it's in recognition that That the Creator, when He created the sun, it's just stood there, never moved. And finally He said, I got to make it go down or it's going to burn my people. And so it goes down. So it's always that reminder that our Creator is right here. He's going to make the sun go down. So our songs begin with that. It's a reminder of the Creator's power as that sun goes down. So those very teachings and those, like my wife says, those very truths, those are our truths. We know that the sun is going to set. That's a truth. We know these things. Just like I was telling you about when that lady stood up and the people said, what are we going to do? And they said, okay, we're going to cremate 3 days. The moon leaves 3 days and it comes back. So that's a truth for us, right? We see it. We all could see it. And the medicine men are showing us because they're explaining it because we all know that. It's not something that they just came up with. It's something we could see and we could understand. Again, taking songs and using these things to teach us, hey, we could see this. We know this truth here. It's not something that they just pulled out of a bag. Like I always say that our people are people of design. They sat down and they thought these things through. It wasn't by chance. Nothing's by chance. You have chance, you have chaos. These things are designed out. Again, a way of thinking, a way of conscious, a way of these songs being taught, teaching generations after generations after generations, until somebody comes in and says, no, you stop that. You start singing these songs. You start singing this song. A song we don't even understand. A song that sounds pretty, but we don't know what it's saying. So these kind of things that were taken away from us. And then we sit today and we wonder why. Why are we kind of lost? Why are these things happening to us? Not all, but there's a lot that feel that way, that get into different things because they don't have those teachings that were taught through songs and through, different things that the church taken away from us. And, for a long time for myself, I always asked, why did God let this happen? And for a long time in my life, really. And then when I got married, my wife here, she explained a lot to me because, when I understand their side of it, when they're coming from that book side of it, of the Bible, and then learning about those kind of things, how, different things were taken out, things were put in, and, it's like, wait, I was told that God made this book. But then you find out over the years, well, some of these books have been exchanged, and now we have the King James Version, and it's like, wait. But then when you go back and you start to think, God gave us free will. Gave us free will. So it was men that did to us, not God. It's what men did to us, because they had free will. And even though that they didn't understand, today, with my wife, we find out things within the Bible like, wow, this is, it becomes clearer. That again, but sometimes people, they don't understand that book as well as they think they do. Because one of the things, when my wife, she's gone to different kind of churches, and I used to tell her, hey, you're supposed to be going to church on Saturday. That's the Sabbath, not Sunday. And she would argue with me, oh, no. And I said, look in your book. Look in your book. Because that's the day of what you call But even them took on pagan things and incorporated it into it. And even like I said, so even our belief system, today, like I said, we had songs for the death, and then we had songs for the anniversary to send them to heaven as we know it. They called those songs Chiotai, the big song. Nobody knows them no more. Nobody knows all of our songs have a story and a beginning and an ending to it. And so they go all through the night. People don't know those songs no more. They don't know, they know a couple of songs here and there, but we don't know how all the songs that were sang at that time. But we do know is they did incorporate some of our stuff into the anniversary. Like today, when we have an anniversary of somebody, they'll put 3 boxes, 1, 2, 3. And today, even a lot of our own people don't know what that means. But those 3 boxes mean the 3 days that Jesus was in the tomb. Because our version of this, of our own way of doing this, was that we created an image. And that image, that doll that we made, the spirit would go into that doll. And then after the ceremony, they would take it and burn that doll, and it would release the spirit to heaven as we know it. But the church was like, well, we gotta put our hand in there too, so we're gonna make these 3 boxes, and you're just like the doll you're making. Well, we're gonna capture that spirit into these, just like Jesus was in that tomb. You don't need to make your image no more, Just you use this. So you could see how they knew that they couldn't take everything away because we probably wouldn't follow it. So they made sense on how to. Well, in our story, Jesus was in this tomb for 3 days, and then, he gets released. Well, that's what you guys could do, instead of making that image, well, because that was the same concept of ours, is that once we made that image, the spirit would go into it. And all night, the different nights, they would take that image and they would dance it. That ceremony went from anywhere from 7 to 4 days, depending on the family. But the church, like I said, came in, then they changed it a little bit. And so a lot of people think we don't do that crook ceremony anymore. And I tell them, we still do it. We just do a different version of it because the church came in, they changed some of it. But all of that is our way of thinking. And they incorporated these things into it. Again, trying to take us away of our own way of thinking, our own way of learning. And, like I said, these songs have, just like I was teaching, that's telling you that song, they're talking about that. Here's the mockingbird. Just like the boys, like I said, they were singing, the sun's going down. Second song they sang was to get up and dance. And it's not really to get up and dance the way we sing it. It's really saying that mathai, meaning we're in this new land. Old people's like, we're in this different realm. Now our ancestors could come down, they're going to dance with us. They're going to dance with us now until we send them back home. So that's what they were singing about. Hey, they're here with us. They're going to be here in spirit with us. And then they talked about the coyote, how he's coming. The coyote, he's coming in the night where you can't really see him. And the way the people believe is that, who's the coyote here? Who's the coyote? Who's the one that got the negative thoughts about what we're doing here? Who's the one that, there's always, that's the way the people. But again, it's all about choice. You could be the coyote or you cannot. You don't have to be. But he's here. That thing is still here, Who is it? It doesn't have to be anybody, but who's acting like that? So that's what they talk about on that coyote. And then, so the next song that they sang, talking about the coyote's gone. And that song comes in the morning. Because now what we're saying is, we beat him. We beat that coyote. He's gone now. And the one that's always watching him is the nighthawk. The nighthawk, that's what that song's saying. The nighthawk's there watching the coyote leave. Like I said, in the songs that we're singing at nighttime, that's when he's coming. He's trying to use that as the camouflage to be here, to be amongst the people, to try to create commotion or, like I said, just that negativity. Because that when we're singing and we're doing, and now we're finding that, that these songs and these things create a vibration that soothes you. Like I always tell people, look, we're like a song. Our heart beats. Our heart beats. Our brain's got waves in it. And when there's something wrong, when you heart's not good, it's not beating good, there's something wrong. Yes, you're not in that motion. That's what these songs are doing. They're putting you into that thing. That's why you're able to see these different things if you're into it. But your mind and your body and your spirit has to be into it. When you sing, you give it your all. That's what they used to tell us. You give it your all. You don't half-ass it. You give it your all. You'll see it. Meaning that you'll see this things open up. That's a power that it has that was trying to be taken away from us. Because when you take that away from us, we can't see through some of the things that you're trying to make us do. That's just wrong. That's what that power of music. And like I said, we don't know how much we've lost because of all those songs, the different styles of songs that we had. Every one of them with a different gourd sound to it. Not the, one of the things that some of the anthropologists that came around, they were saying, you could distinguish when they sang a different style of song. It was different from the one that they sang before, just the way the gourd was played. So most people could come and say, oh yeah, there's a different style going on because the gourd playing is different. So you could imagine all these different songs that like I said, everything we did had music that went along with it. If we were out picking acorns, if we were out there picking grass, one of the things that I read from Ed Davis, and he recorded a Karuk ceremony in 1906. It was actually my great-great-great-grandfather's clan. It was the last one that was done in Weipai, and because they knew the songs. And one of the things that he talked about, they were going to go get the wood to build the house. And the only thing they took with them was a gourd rattle. And the rattle, because what they were going to do was they were going to go out there and pray and ask for these things to sacrifice so that we could do this ceremony. That's what these songs did, was to give homage. Hey, I'm going to use you. I'm going to need you. Forgive me, but I need to take from you. Even in our creation story, all we ate was mud. We didn't eat nothing else. And it was the deer that stood up first and said, you can eat me. It was the different animals that stood up and said, we can eat them, we can use them. That's how we knew how to do those things. Those are the way that, again, not to take advantage of them, but to use them in the right way, respecting them in a way that was going to help us. One of the things that really different between our belief system and Christianity was we're equal to everything. We're not above anything. We're not above the plants. We're not above the animals. We're equal to them. We're the same. And the other thing is we didn't have a hell. Everybody's going to go to that same place. Those are two major differences that we had. And those things, because again, knowing that you cannot take advantage of an animal, you cannot take advantage of the plants. Those things were here to help us. And they gave us that permission to use them. But again, like I said, we've had now many years of Catholicism, a lot of that knowledge being lost. Even in my great-grandmother's time, even then, they knew these songs. I always say, my great-grandmother, they knew all these different styles of songs. They would sing with different people. Then her kids were my great-uncles. They sang country songs. They didn't sing our songs. And they had, good voices. They probably could have cared, but they rather sing country songs. When I came along and there was no other young people learning it, well, I was like, I'm going to learn this. How kind of all started was when I was in third grade, and they were talking about our people, and they were talking about the crook ceremony, and I'm like, I've never heard that. I don't. So I went home, told my parents, and they're like, we don't do nothing like that. I don't know where they got that at, and then my great-grandmother came over and she goes, no, we still do that. This is how, and then talked about the anniversary and talked about what that ceremony was. Because it hadn't been done for so long and we lost our own meaning of it. So even today, a lot of our own people don't, they'll do that anniversary, but because they're going to put the headstone up. Because for our people, you couldn't put the headstone up because they weren't gone yet. Until we did that ceremony, then now we're sending them to heaven. But through that night, as we were going through those nights, it was to build that bridge from the spirit world to our world where we would go when they, And so you can imagine how important that is. But we've lost those beliefs. Now people just go, I'm going to put up a headstone. Well, the old people say they're stuck here. Nobody sent them. Nobody's sending them to heaven as we know it. Because they're not doing the ceremony that's supposed to be done correctly to send them to heaven. So they're here, they're stuck. That's what our people the old people would say. But today our young people, they don't know. They don't know. And it's not their fault. Like I said, when you have a force that's pushing and saying, don't think like this, don't be like this, you need to be like this today. You need to, unfortunately today, you need to be a consumer, not a builder of anything or think anything. Just you need to be able to buy and consume. Where our world was nothing like that. It was not about consuming. Like I said, it was about designing, thinking it through. Sit down, like a lot of times when I'd go to ask old people about different things, they'd tell me, well, okay, let me think about that. They never would come and just, let me think about that. And today, again, because sit down and maybe like we heard today from Carrico. Dream about it. You're working so much with it. It'll come to you in your dreams. It'll come to you. Even my old chairman used to say that. He goes, when I couldn't figure nothing, I couldn't come up with the answer. I'd have to go home and dream about it. And it would come to me. It would come to me. But that was considered taboo. That's how our people did different things. But when this religion came in and says, you no longer can do these kind of things, well, you know, so today, when we look at our children, this is where my wife's going to come in and talk about that part.
Well, this, he just asked me last night, so I was just been thinking like, oh, Lord. But some of the things that he touched upon, we've had many discussions in regards to this Western linear way of being. And so when we moved away from our traditional knowledge, we've adapted. In fact, it's like trying to make the analysis of a fish in a water. A fish doesn't know anything other than what they've been living in. And so to differentiate, you know, being outside of water, they have to experience that. So it's looking at alternative ways of coming up with thought processes. And I was telling my husband, and he did a good job in terms of describing the analogy of the train. And I said, well, you know, go beyond that and looking at alternative ideas and thought processes where you're laying the railroad tracks down in order for you to drive that knowledge through. And it's not going to be possible if you don't have alternative ways of thinking. When we're just stuck within this Western frame of mind and we've adapted it and it's part of our whole being, in some sense that it's really our core belief system. And when I work with a lot of my clients, I work with identifying some of their error way of thinking in order for them to bring change into the life, the more preferred changes. And the core belief system is, you know, where did we get our thought processes from, our feelings from, all of that. And it's really literally from the environment that we grew up in. It's the culture that we grew up in, all these things. And we're, you know, today in this Western knowledge where we're just so embedded in it. And so growing up on the reservation, I was telling my husband that, you know, the fact that we were privileged to grow up on the reservation to where we've had that traditional theoretical framework to be able to draw from. Because that, for one, was our first framework when it was constructed for us. And being told our traditional knowledge base, our culture, our ceremonies, our practices, and stuff like that. And in that sense, that helped in terms of building the railroad tracks to be able to think outside the box of Western way of being. Because this Western linear way is so restricting for us. It's so restricting. And so a lot of times it's like, well, I only have A, B, C in terms of dealing with some of the problems that I have to deal with on a daily basis. And what are going to be my alternative ideas for that if I only have constructed A, B, and C? So the traditional knowledge base that I draw from, it helps me go from A to Z, and I have multiple solutions in dealing with my problems for today, rather than having to go through this cycle of, well, I only have this limited mindset in dealing with problems and it's not working. So then my coping mechanisms and how to deal with these problems is not effective, and so therefore I have to go to other means in terms of, you know, what we call the secondary conditions, which is alcoholism. You're looking at maladaptive behaviors and stuff like that, and not really addressing, well, you know, the primary condition is my core belief system, my error way of thinking, because when I'm told and I'm brought up and taught that, Indians are deficient, Indians are not enough, Indians are just drunks, Indians are no good, and this is what the condition of environment that I was brought up in, and mainly a lot of Indians that live on the reservation. And then so when we try and step outside of that, we're not, because we're not given the script to say, hey, you know what, I'm so much more, and my belief system and myself is really tainted in some sense of what has been ascribed to me because of how I've been conditioned. And so I can't think outside of that. So basically, when I look at my core belief system, I don't really evaluate, the cognitive distortions that I have bought into about myself and about my community. And so therefore, I'm over here perpetuating it. So basically, here I am. If I'm a part of community, if I'm in a leadership, and I'm over here progressing a lot of the problems in our community because of this core belief system that I bought into, this error way of thinking, and not correcting it, then there's, it's just going to be perpetuated from generation to generation to generation. And so it's really identifying, well, what are some of the things that I have bought into, and evaluating it and really thinking, well, is this how I really see myself? And being told over and over and over, we're taught not to question it, just to think that, a lot of the research that's based on us is really looking at pathological outcomes and highlighting that rather than looking at alternative outcomes. And so people buy into that as well, and looking at, well, they're deficient, and here's proof of it. Here's factual information of it on the research, which is really skewed anyway, and it's coming up with, well, no, we're not dealing with how the method in itself in doing the research is not really accurate. And so it doesn't really measure out, our traditional thought processes. It doesn't value it. And so, again, always looking at the deficient self. So, I was telling my husband, we get into these discussions because I'm working on my third dissertation because, again, it's like having to change my topic and my methodology because my second dissertation was, well, you know what, intergenerational trauma, historical trauma is not validated. And therefore, you're going to have to change your dissertation because we're not going to sign off on it. And if you want to continue in the argument of this, maybe you should go down to a university that is more watered down in their standards. But we're not going to lower our standards in saying that, this historical trauma piece is valid. And so it was just, traumatizing in itself. And so it's looking at these core belief systems about American Indian students. And so, again, it's having to change that within the whole curriculum of graduate school and saying that, our traditional knowledge base is just as good. And so when we've adapted this Western linear way of thinking, we develop maladaptive coping mechanisms to deal with some of the problems that we have to deal with that comes across on a daily basis, because problems are going to come to us in waves on a daily basis. And if we don't have alternative solutions for it, we are not going to do well with it. And so we are going to do things that are, is going to be more, I guess, an easier way out in terms of managing our pain and our suffering and stuff like that. So what I looked at in terms of this whole past year is what I really learned a lot in terms of helping a particular population that was struggling with the deficient model. And so it was looking at their thought process and changing their way of thinking, their error way of thinking, and giving them alternative ideas on how to look at themselves and their situation. And that was more of a vehicle of a empowerment, more of a positive psychology approach. And so it's laying down those railroad tracks for them to be able to expand their ideas beyond the box of Western knowledge. And it was thinking outside that box and being very creative. And this is where the discussion came in with my husband in terms of looking at that traditional knowledge piece to help in terms of helping us think outside that box a whole different way of being. And like you guys stated, dreaming and coming up with solutions. That's an alternative way. That's thinking outside the box, because you have knowledge that comes in many different forms. You know, it's like a metamorphosis of things that are still in the progress, and it's still a process that's taking place. And that's how I work with my clients, is like, okay, you know, we're in a metamorphosis state. We haven't really evolved or come to a conclusion yet, but we're in the process of it. But that's what is so beautiful about this, is the process of how we can develop and construct alternative ways of being that is more natural for us. Something that is not unnatural is the Western knowledge thought base, where it's just so restricting. And you can only live so far a linear way. And so it's just coming up with alternative ideas. And the traditional knowledge base is so alive that, you know, when I think about our ceremonies and the purpose and the symbolism behind it, and how it's like a portal of getting us into a whole new different dimension, a whole new way of being. And that's how it was prior to the colonization process. And that's what we need to get back into, because again, I'm looking at, trying to think, I'm all over the place, but you know how the songs, it is a coping mechanism in so many ways. And basically it helps us to go beyond that linear way of thinking to where we're looking at really alternative ways of living, alternative ways of being alive and being influential. And it would have been nice to have stolen, you know, those songs out of Death's suitcase so that we would have it today in our present. And so that would be one of my recommendations, is to start recording, start writing, start doing whatever we need to do to be able to steal what we have today out of Death's suitcase, so that those generations after us will have this, and at least have many things intact for them that they can maybe, you know, bridge across in their own ways, in their own creativity, and having to, I guess, bring that whole piece back to us, the wholeness of what we were so much when we were, I guess, basically healthy, alive, where we could tap into multiple frequencies to be able to manage our healing, or receive our healing. And that's what I'm grateful for, because we just went to a ceremony a few days ago where you look at, you know, those songs and how it's like a portal going into that spiritual place, that realm, and bringing back those, you know, those things that govern that spiritual world to the present for that patient that was receiving that ceremony. And so, again, it's thinking outside that Western box that, you know, my grandmother always says, it doesn't make sense to me, Jodine, that you have to, you know, your patients have to go and see you for how many weeks before they feel any relief or any sense of wellness, you know, because she was saying it doesn't make sense that you have to wait for that when we have ceremonies that it's done automatically, instantly. And so she was saying that it's almost like you're thinking backward in so many ways. And that opened my eyes up to, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's operating in a whole different realm. And so it's identifying that, you know, this traditional knowledge that we have that's been taken from us, it's very important that we bridge it back together so that we have that piece to where we can tap into that frequency and to be able to adapt and grow. Because you know, just the way things are going now and how things are happening to where, you know, there's talk about China being one of the major leaders in the world that's coming up. It's like, how as an Indian community are we going to deal with this? And so there's just so much that we are going to have to prepare for, to be able to plan ahead so that we're going to be able to survive and be okay. So there's a lot to do.
Well, you know, like, again, you know, when you, but we tell like the young people that, you know, you're not the first that you might be going through something, you're not the first one to experience that. Other people have. You're not the first, you're not the last, but you're not alone. And so again, trying to give them that reassurance that sometimes, and that's what a lot of these songs are about, traveling, going different places, or, so again, what the teachings there is that, again, you're not the first one to experience some of the things that you are. In other words, don't give up on it, because a little bit further, things are going to change again. It's going to get better. But it's, again, it's the ups and downs of it. Even this, the gourd itself. The old people would say, this is your wife. Young man, when he picks up the gourd, this is your wife, they'd say. It's very fragile. You drop it, it'll break. But what it's doing, it's training you to be a good husband. That again, you're not going to hit your wife because she's fragile, just like this. That's what the training of this is. That's why, I see a lot today, like the women want to pick this up, and it's like, no, that was considered taboo. It's the men that play this. And there's, like I said, there's reasons for this, because again, this is his wife. It's training him how to take care of this. And when he learns how to take care of this, he's going to learn how to take care of his wife. So there's those teachings that again, luckily some of it got passed down to us, but I mean, there's just so much more that got lost. But all we have to do is find it again, and there's different mechanisms to find these things again. I don't know if Mike's in here, but there was a thing in the desert. They called it the spokes wheel. It was just this round thing, and it had these things going out and had a circle around it. And none of our people were alive to know what that was. And so Mike goes and he takes it, and he ends up saying, "Oh, this is it's pointing. These things are pointing to different stars and different things." So what he did was to able to take this knowledge that he got out, from school, and bring it back and to us to relearn something again. So that knowledge is still out there. We just have to be able to pull it back in. And so it's never, like I said, it's kind of lost, but it could be found. It was just that we had to put that work into it. And today, just like earlier, Jamie was asking about, what do we think about Native American Month? And I was telling her, it's not something that all of a sudden they came and said, "Hey, why don't we have Native American Month?" It was because what we were pushing forward, what we are doing out there and saying, look, you need to start recognizing, you need to start having this understanding. But not in a forceful way, but within an understanding way. Because, when people can see and you can explain the right and the wrong of it, most people are going to say, yeah, that's wrong, all right, And there's going to be some that, they know it's wrong and they don't care. All right, that's all right. But there's going to be a lot more people out there that's saying, these things are not right. How do we rectify it? How do we change it? And again, it comes back to us, what is that answer? And sometimes we don't even know what that answer is either yet, because we've been in this mode of survival that, that sometimes it's hard to get out of that thinking and to know what's best for us, and moving forward. But again, like I said, there's a lot of teachings that were our music, and it's not just that teaching, but it's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking as well as it's our, because like a lot of times, when my mother was here, and I'd ask her, "Mom, I want to say this," Now tell me in Indian how to say it. And she was like, that's not how we talk. I'll tell you how I would say it, but it's not going to come out like English, like what you're saying here, because that's not some of these things the way we talk or the way we think. You know, like somebody asked me, oh, how do you say rest in peace? And I'm like, I guess you probably could say, you know, every word for rest and peace and stuff like that, but it's not something how we would talk. It's not how we think like that. You know, just like, you know, like a lot of us will say, you know, we don't say goodbye, we say, we'll see you. You know, and as a boy, I asked my mom, why did we say that? And she said, because, you know, if you went down the road and something happened to you, that's not the end. At the end, we'll see each other again some way, you know, talking about in the next world, we'll see each other again. That's why we say that. We'll see you. You know, because when I would say that at school to my friends, they'd look at me like, what are you talking? You know, that don't make sense. I'll see you. But really, when our way of thinking, it does make a lot of sense. We'll see you. So, again, that's that way of thinking and the way of doing things. You know, like I said, some people might say, well, it's really simple, but our language was very descriptive. It didn't leave chance out there that, that, oh, you know, I'll just take it like this. No, just like, and it's hard, I try to learn my language too. And, one of the things that like uncle, we don't have a word for just uncle. It's either your mother's younger brother, middle brother, older brother, but there's a word for each one of it. Because they knew exactly, when you were talking about your uncle, they knew exactly which one you were talking about, on your mother's side and the oldest one. Because that's how they talked. It wasn't just like, today I could say uncle, and they're like, well, which one is he talking about? Mother's side, father's side? In our language, it was very, no, you're talking about your mother's brother, and it's the older one, and, so it was very descriptive. And so sometimes when, like I said, when I try to ask her something in English, she'd say, well, that's not how we talk. I can't say it like that. Or I can, but it don't make sense to us. That's what she would say. And, over the years talking with Langdon, she said sometimes even the way we talk English is a way of our language. It's not, like my wife's always correcting me. It's got to be like this, But I'm talking like how our people talked, but again, like I said, so these are the things that, that a lot of these things that got taken away from us, a way of thinking, a way of doing things, and even how to solve these different problems, as they arise. Again, like my wife saying, thinking outside that box, and we all know that. How many times sometimes we listen to a song and it brings back a memory. Oh, I remember that song being played when we were doing this. Or, again, those are those things that it's going outside that box where I can listen to a song, it means this to me, and my wife can listen, it means something different to her. It's all within our interpretation of our, of our upbringing and how we're using it. Because, my wife here, she's Navajo, from a Navajo reservation, and I'm Kumeyaay, and we don't always see, things the same, because their people did things differently than my people did. And so, but again, it's those things that, that we've lost a lot of it by the church. And, and like I said, it's not about putting blame there. It's because even themselves didn't understand their own religion. And we see it, because at that time it was only Catholicism. There was no other churches at that time. And then, as you could see them evolving, here comes Martin Luther coming in and say, hey, let's look at this a little bit different. And now you see all these other ones now taking this book and saying, here's a different way of looking at it. And again, that's them evolving. And the truth of the matter, we were way ahead of that. And now we're going kind of backwards, and so, so that's why we see sometimes some of the problems that we have within our communities, because a lot of this kind of stuff was taken away from us. And when we talk about this historical trauma and stuff like that, where they're telling my wife, well, you can't validate that. Well, what do you mean you can't validate that? How could you say that? But that's what they're saying. And, so telling her, change your dissertation, and it becomes, it's just wrong, and here you have a place of higher learning that's doing that. And that's where, again, as our own people, we have to infiltrate some of these things and start telling the truth about what has happened here and why we still deal with some of the things that we still deal with today. Because, we heard people talk about earlier about tradition and culture and, all these different things and culture and stuff like that. It all changes. It changes over time. It's never the same. It evolves, and so. But again, it should evolve in a right way, in a way of thinking that's making things better, and because a lot of our people get caught up in, well, I can't do that because that's not traditional, like I've seen people like say. We can't use a backhoe. It's not right. We got to dig it. And it's like, well, I got an old digging stick at my house that Shippeck gave me that came from one of our tribal members. And it's ironwood, and it's heavy, and it's got a sharp point to it. But I sit there trying to dig with that thing, it's going to take you damn all day. When you could go get, when a shovel came along, our people were smart enough to say, shit, this shovel works pretty good. And now there's a backhoe. Shit, that even works better. It's our own way of thinking that sometimes that holds us back from even going further. And so we've been stagnated where we're not making no new songs, we're not making no new sites, we're not doing a lot of things because we've been told, you're never going to get beyond this. You people are right here, and it's a miracle you're still here today, and and you shouldn't be. But what are we doing to create better? That's where we need to move forward, and to help our people to thrive, because we were always a thriving people. We've lived here, for thousands and thousands of years through droughts, through different things. And it's because we've always had somebody's thinking and dealing with these things. And today, we sit here and we're saying, how do we deal with our people that don't want to move forward? And they get caught up in thinking that because I can't move forward because it's going to make me not traditional. No, some like these things here, this music, it's old, but there's a lot of teachings in it. But how do we bring those teachings forward? Like I say, like a lot of our stories had a lot to do with animals and their movements and their things that they're doing. And yet, today, our kids are just like everybody else, is right here on these damn phones. And what is that? I don't. Well, that's a scorpion. Well, does it sting? Well, yes, it does. But they don't know nothing about that. So how can you tell a story about that? Because they don't even know what it is. So how do we bring our knowledge into today's thinking in a way that, again, always do what is right? That's what we need to teach them, always to do what is right. Those things have not changed, right and wrong. They have not changed. And that's what we have to have, that understanding of our own people, that, again, as long as we stay know right from wrong, we can move forward.
But not only that, not just doing what's right, but even having the courage and being brave enough to do it, and not be so concerned about what other people might think or say, and that is in itself. But a lot of the traditional knowledge base is what's going to help us to be able to think outside of just that linear way of thinking. Because one of my favorite scholars is Robert Berghofer. And he made the statement that basically that, it's coming from the white man's book where, what is it, the white man's Indian, where he said that basically we're the ventriloquist dummy, where the ventriloquist is the one that's telling us how to think, how to talk, how to behave, all this stuff. And when are we going to stop being the ventriloquist dummy and move outside of that? And that was very, very powerful, because we're conditioned. We're conditioned to say that this is our truth. This is your truth, this is your knowledge, and that's it. And not even question it. And when we start to look at alternative ways of looking at the knowledge that's been given to us and whether or not we buy into it, we need to be critical thinkers and to be able to construct our own ideas and ways. And that traditional knowledge base is what helps us. At least, it helps us to have avenues outside that linear way of thinking. There are alternative ways of thinking about things. And when you have at least that door opening, you can do many things outside of that.
Well, when you use your truths, like I said, like I was telling you that story of the lady. So what they used was the truths, things that they could see and understand. Then now that we have to make this change. So again, it's given you the power to make changes, that when things happen, how do we deal with it? Well, we use the things, our truths, to set us free, to make that change, to give us that understanding, and we can make that change because we see it within our truths. So we've always had that. So I'm saying, this is nothing new to us. We've always had these things that to sit there and say, okay, this came up, this is brand new to us. Okay, this is how we're going to deal with it. We're going to use our own truths to have that understanding and make that change. That's where right now we're kind of stagnated. We're like she said, we're afraid to make that jump forward. And then afraid of our own people criticizing us. Well, that's not traditional. That's not, and that's what holds us back. That's what's holding us back. Because we see it today. When somebody gets educated and comes back to the reservation, they don't think like us no more. They're different, And even though that they can help us, they're more afraid of them. They're afraid of that. And it's because they're not opening their own mind. And they're afraid of that. And like I said, when you start using your own truths and you start showing your own people that, then they can't argue those things. Then they have to start embracing it. But right now, we haven't done that. And so we need to start moving forward, We are in certain things, but, we have a long ways to go. But this is our foundation. That's what we're trying to say. We got to get back to our foundation, and once we know we have good ground to stand on, we can start making those steps forward. You need a good foundation, and that's what all these things, these teachings, is giving us that foundation to move forward as a people. And that's what the church tried to take away from us, And that's what they did for a long time. But now we have to see it for what it was. Not what it is, but for what it was. We'll start to thrive again. And then that's, that's what we have to start teaching our young people. Like my wife here, she goes into a lot of, sometimes it just goes right over my head, like, okay, give me a chance to catch up to what you're saying here. Because it's critical to, again, our movement forward. Again, how do we beat these things that are holding us down? How do we get away from it? How do we get free from it? Like she said, she's helped people to break that. And we've had, that's the sad part, is that we had medicine men to do that. We had people that were there to, so because today, when our people will say, I'm not going to go see a therapist. But we've always had these people. But they forgot. They forgot we've had these people. This is what the medicine men were doing. This is what they were performing to give you that, and instead of saying, and then, the other part of it, it takes work. You have to work at it. You have to make that, to do the work. She can help you, guide you there, but it really takes you to work to do the work. And that's what we have to get our people to start, quit sitting back and feeling sorry for yourself. We're never going to get nowhere. We have to get up and say, no, I'm not going to let that hold me back. I'm going to stand up and, even, I know this because when I was teaching young people how to sing, I had people coming to me and saying, don't be doing that. What's wrong with you? They don't, and I'm like, I don't care what you say, I'm going to do it. And I had, even with our hand game, I was told, oh, you're teaching our people how to gamble. No, this is our tradition. I'm going to do it. I don't care what you say. And then pretty soon those people were right there learning too. But they sat there and fought with me the whole way. You shouldn't be doing that. What's wrong with you? They're too young. They're not. No, that's when they need to learn. And like I said, it's like, you could say what you want, but I'm going to go forward with it.
I think you need to open up for questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions?
I have a question. So I've spent a lot of my career trying to rescue bits of the lost songs. But watching you today, listening to you today, listening to you sing, it seems to me that some of what hasn't been lost is the approach, the way of being.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if your grandmother or great-grandfather could hear you today, whether they wouldn't say, Junior, you got it.
I was really fortunate because it was always my family that they did some of this stuff. They were never like but all of our people did it. It's not just my own family, but some of those people were stronger than some others. And just like today, we have in our community today, we have people that are very strong, we have people that are weak, but we need to bring them along. And our ancestors are probably very proud of all of us because we're still here. I think I'm just trying to do my part. And just like my wife, she's doing her part. Where it's something that not everybody wants to do it, and that's okay. But just don't get in our way. Help us, That's the big part of it, I guess. Any other one?
I first just want to thank you, and I love to listen
to Jake Hockham and sing, and when we were singing, I always say when I hear Jake sing, it's like 40 men are singing with him, and when I heard you sing here, it's that he carries that's from you and taught from you. That is so beautiful, the way that he sings. And when we were planning the Warrior Spirit Conference, we went and sat in on Ethan Venegas' class, and he was talking about prior to Christianity, the Kumeyaay people never spoke of time. Everything was about place, and life wasn't food. And I started thinking about everything that makes us sick is about time. It's about regretting something from the past, or fearing the future, or heaven and hell, right? And so when you said there was no hell, and what we see with people dying from overdose, with everything that's happening that's so devastating, do you see it in that, you know, how to ask it, like, we stopped being present. There was a stop on the ability to be present, because everything was about getting here or avoiding there, and time. Do you kind of feel that in what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it seems just that goes away, you know. When you really sit there and concentrate on the song, you know, that thing of time doesn't exist, it seems like, yes. You know, I mean, that's, you know, again, you know, something that I'm trying, like I said, I didn't know how to explain, but somebody helped me now that I can explain it. You know, that meditation part of it, because I didn't know how to say it. There, even within our singing, there was questions I asked my person that taught me, and he would say, "Yes, you're getting there. You're getting there." He never told me that you're going to hear this or you're going to see this, nothing like that, because he didn't want me to, oh yeah, I've seen that or I've heard that. He always waited for me to ask him, because I would ask him, and he'd say, "You're getting there. You're getting there." So, you know, that's one of the things that I really admired with him, because he never tainted me to think that way. It was always that when I sit there and I'd ask him about it, and then he would say, "Okay, yeah, you're that." You know, he would explain a bit more about, and then he, you know, say, "You're getting there. You're becoming this," and so sometimes we don't tell. We can't. That's why you're not supposed to tell everything. You got to wait for that question. You have to wait for that question, and you know, trying to teach the young people how to sing today is like they don't want somebody to teach them. They want it YouTube, or they're going to different things and going out there just singing, and they don't know what they're singing about. They don't know, you know, they're just out there thinking that, you know, look at me. And it's never about look at me. This is for the people. It's not for you. It's not about you. It's for the people. And that's where, you know, a lot of we had a talk on this. We had different lead singers come in and talk about this from different tribes. And we had I'd say about a couple hundred people that came, young people. And we were trying to tell them, look, you need a teacher. You need a mentor. Somebody's going to mentor you in this. Because if you think that you're just going to go to YouTube and listen to it like that, well, first of all, you're not getting the meaning down. You're not getting all these things that should be coming along with it. You can't fast track it. That's what we're trying to tell them. You can't fast track this thing. You have to have a mentor, somebody that's going to mentor you into it, because you'll get so much more out of it. But just like with most young people, they want it right now. They want it now. And they're, like I said, and it's part of it. And we have parents sometimes doing it. Oh, look at my son, you know, like little kids, like, you know, this is not meant to be shown off or anything like that. It's not to be look cute. It's something that was given to us that we do, and it takes years to get there. But they don't understand that. They want it right now. So we're kind of having that right now with a lot of our young people, because they want it real fast, and they're not getting all the teachings that come along with it. Again, to be able to ask these questions, hey, this happened to me, what does that mean? Well, okay, let me explain it, because like I said, they're not going to, we were told, you don't talk about that. You let them come to ask you about it, and then you could talk about it, because you don't want to taint them, making them thinking like, oh, yeah, I heard this, and like, no, you really don't want that, because they're fooling themselves, and that's what you don't want.
I think that you hit on a subject that I've been very, very curious about, because when I was doing a couple of research that talked about our life outside of time, I think that is key in terms of a whole different way of being, moving from linear to a multi-dimensional way of being, and how we existed prior to colonization. And I wonder about that. I wonder what life would be like, what it would look like in terms of living outside of time. Because there's just something about that knowledge that is just so, I'm just so curious about, that I think is very, very important, that I wonder. So I'm trying to figure out more ways of gathering information about that, because there's just so few information out there on it, on existence without time. And I think it was Calvin, I can't remember that scholar that first mentioned it, the work that I came across. Yes, Calvin Martin that discussed that. That was just so mind-provoking that I was just thinking, wow, kind of a thing. He's one of the ones that I really, really enjoy reading as well. And so that's something to think about. And I believe that is one of the key factors in terms of linking us back to what you talk about in terms of getting knowledge and answers from our dreams, from other resources, other than, what we think that within a classroom. So, yes.
Any other questions?
Hi. I'm interested in what mechanisms you're talking about to dealing with trauma. I use some to deal with trauma, and I'm from Guatemala, Mayan descent, and we can create things, right? I mean, what I'm talking about is why not create something? Because I'm thinking, if you could create, you could sing. You could create maybe songs that maybe can help people deal with trauma or passing down knowledge. But also because I have this, I read, there's this poet, Mayan Quiche from the highlands of Guatemala, that I read. And I really internalized what he was talking about it's in Spanish, he wrote it in Spanish. He has a book about poems about being connected with nature. Right? And when I was going through a trauma that I was going through, I was reciting that poem constantly. And it really empowered me. It really gave me that power to deal with the trauma and stay calm. And this is something that he did, like he wrote it. It's contemporary stuff, like he saw nature, he was in touch with nature. He passed in 2019, but he was able to create something that I never met him. I never met this individual, but I used it as a way to deal with trauma, something to heal, right? Because I was fortunate enough someone gave it to me, someone passed it down to me, and I had it, and I really read it. And I learned some of the poems, and I would recite them. And so I was just wondering, how come not make something? If you're talking about lost songs, how can we here today, we can create for people? Or is that going against what you're talking about? the traditional way that it was passed down from something, from the creator. But I'm just wondering, like, what, like I'm passing down this knowledge to my son. Like we recite this poem every day before we go to sleep. And I'm telling them this is a poem that can empower you at times of be feeling alone if something's going on. You know, so I'm just wondering about that. Why not create something and that is contemporary, but it's something that is coming from the same idea of passing down knowledge? What do you think about something like
Yeah, I think that's, again, that's some of the things that we have to do is we have to, because there's new traumas. So even in some of our old ways, we don't have ways to deal with that trauma because it's something that's new. So we have to create new ways of dealing with that trauma. So yes, I think that, yes, we have to. That's why, we always have to keep creating because there's new things that are coming that we've never dealt with before, and we don't have ways to deal with it. Like my wife says that sometimes that they don't have ceremony for some of the things that because they've it's something that they never dealt with, but so I'm sure pretty soon they're going to be creating new ways of how to deal with those kind of things because like I said, there's different things that are happening that we even in our own ways, we didn't have ways to dealing with that. So we had to create new ways because the atmosphere and the things are different now than so you have to create a new way of dealing with it.
I like what you said about the words and the poetry behind it because, part of the healing, the right brain, is very creative and creativity. So you're looking at all of that to help with the healing process of it. But just recently, and it's just something that I've experienced recently, was basically the idea, and it did come to me in a dream, in terms of how I had been dealing with this horrific experience of traumatization in an institution, being an American Indian woman at that, in this institution, but I didn't have the words or the ways of dealing with it. And then so finally it dawned on me that I need to construct that wording to be able to work towards and bridging that healing process. So it was like I was explaining to my chair at the time was that, well, you know what, I ran out of tracks. I ran out of road. I went to, the level that I should go to, and there's nothing there. I said I bought into a lie saying, the people telling me all this crap, and I bought into it. But guess what? It only led to this end, and that's a dead end. And I need path beyond that to help me to be able to continue on this journey. And so what I learned was, I had to symbolically, metaphorically, and try and write out my own pathway in order for me to move beyond. And finally, that idea of the wording of it and then building the tracks on it was what was helpful in moving me past and beyond to where I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to buy into the BS of what you tell me. I'm so much more. I'm this. And then, and then I had my ex-in-laws tell me in Navajo, this is who you are, so you got to say this in Navajo. And as I'm coming across some really difficult terrain, and I'd repeat over and over in my language, I am this, I am this, I am, strong, I am a strong Indian woman, I am a strong, student and all this stuff. And that is what has empowered me. And I can't explain it really because there's a whole new source of power that comes in. That I'm like, yes, I'm no longer going to buy into this. I'm going to, write my own script. I'm not going to follow the script that they've given me and saying that this is all you're going to go to, Jodine. This is as far as you're going to get. That's it. And I'm like, no, let me rewrite this and let me go beyond that. And in that way, I have a pathway for that. And then so that in some ways, it's empowerment. So, and that's why I'm like, yeah, I can look at our colonization process in a negative way, or I can look at it and translate it in something that is empowering me. So I'm resilient. Yeah, you know, we are people of resilient. I come from a whole long line of resilient people. And that's how I'm going to rewrite this whole experience, because it's the meaning that I'm changing to the experience that's empowering. And that's what gives me liberty to be able to say, yeah, you know what, bring it on now, you know, because I can do more things now.
Well, the thing is, if you have hope, then you'll have will. And that's what it takes, is you got to have hope. And when you have hope, you'll have the will. And that's what that's will take you on to your next, to deal with that very issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to offer gratitude. My name is Mary. I'm from the San Bernardino area, so and I wanted to offer gratitude for sharing the song and also sharing the words. I was in Murrieta with a group of Indigenous Native and First People from the desert. So I really loved your explanation about the desert. And there was we were there to protect the child migrants that were being brought from Central America and different areas in a time that there was a lot of violence. There were police, there were white supremacists, and there was a lot of indigenous community. And I was a witness to folks using song and ceremony to stop violence and prevent violence, bring healing and also protection of the community and the children. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. Songs and ceremony and music has also been used to protect us.
Well, I mean, you know, again, you know, it's song has that music. Really, what it is, it's music has it has no barriers. You know, like I was saying, you know, like I was saying earlier about the Spanish hymns. They're very pretty. I really like the way they're sung. They're just very beautiful melodies. Didn't understand what it was saying, but I did like the melody, and that's, you know, and that's what it could change your frame of mind. You know, like I said, that's why, you know, you can listen to a song, and sometimes it'll take you right back to a memory. Sometimes it's not always a good memory either. It could take you back to a bad memory, or it'll take you to a good memory, but it always brings back a memory sometimes, you know. And so that's the ability of music. It does calm, you know. It does do that calming of things.
The frequency. You're tapped into a frequency.
Yeah.
Explain it to her.
Well, yeah, you know, like we're, you know, like again, you're talking about the different frequencies of that of those sounds that kind of, you know, again, it within your brain, within your heart, it has that ability, and you know.
Because you have a choice between a positive or a negative frequency that you can choose to tap into.
Yeah, like my wife was saying, that you can have you know, either a positive or a negative to that frequency. It's all depending on yourself. Or, you know, even sometimes, you know, people, if there's enough people, if they're feeling that positive, they can change the whole atmosphere. You know, they can change that atmosphere to be a positive one, even with the people that are being negative. Mm-hmm. You know, it'll kind of drown them out, and it'll just make that positive. And so, it has that ability, and that's why, you know, like I said, for our people, music was really a big part of who we were. And you know, like I said, we had songs that were for sad times, for the funerals, and we had songs that were sang for good times. You know, and again, it was to put you in that state, or, you know, even our ways of a long time ago. You know, like if you came across somebody and you seen their hair was very short, or they had black on their face, right away you knew they're in mourning. So what that gave you was that be careful with your words, because they're in mourning. You don't, so they might not want to be laughing. They might, so so when this person approached you, you had to think about what do I say, because I could see they're going through something. And so we had different ways of looking at things. Like even the color red and black. Red was a woman's color, and it was because they were the blood. They are the blood of the people. Black, the men were black because we couldn't have kids. We couldn't, we can't give birth, and so again, those same colors meant life and death. So these things, they had meanings to them. So that when you came across some of these things, you would know, again, that what was going on here, what was happening. So I mean, and there's a lot of that, like I said, that it's changed over time. And even like our creation story, it's not just about the story.
When is this over?
It's about the interactions. Like we have two creators. One's older, one's younger. And the older one, we're always looking to the older one because he's older. And that frame of mind was to tell us, that's why you respected your elders, because they know things that you don't know, because they've lived life and they know these experiences. So that's why you gave them that respect. You listened to what they had to say because they could teach you. And one of the first things that the Creator gave to us was tobacco. Took it from his heart. Here, I give it to you. Again, teaching us how to give. Because when we took that tobacco, what we were going to do was it was used to pray to him. So it was going to come right back to him. But he showed us how to give first, then to learn how to receive. So just those kind of, within that creation story, there's a lot of teachings like that in there. That here. So most people just look at, it's just a story about creation. No, there's a lot of things that go along with that. That's why they used to say it takes 4 days to tell, because there's all these little nuances in there that you had to give to get that understanding. So again, that's where trying to bring those things forward again, because again, that's the way of thinking. That's the what do they call that?
It's our
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Philosophy.
Philosophical framework.
So that's where a lot of that philosophy comes from. It comes within that creation story, and just like I was saying, like in this songs. It's not just songs, but there was teachings that went along with it that said, okay, this is how to look at this song. This is how you look at these different things. It's not just the song, but here's what it plays. This is the role that it plays in it. So again, like I said, it always goes in deeper. And so again, trying to teach these younger people that these are just not songs, but you have to look at the deeper meaning of it, because it's going to open your eyes and your mind. It's not just that you're just singing here. It's actually open your mind and your eyes. You don't have a mentor that's teaching you this. You're not going to learn that. You're not going to learn those things. That's why you need a mentor, somebody that they're going to mentor you into all of this. And it's hard. Like I said, right now it's kind of hard to teach our young people because they just I want to sing, And that's good. That's a good thing. But you have to learn what comes along with it, the ins and outs of it,
So we've taken a lot of
Okay.
Energy and intelligence, and want to thank both Celine and giving us this gift